And that's how you could use it. You could literally use it as the Grinch watching over Whoville. That's what you just described is the thing in
I guess I did, yeah.
in the cave, away from everybody else. Everyone knows to just avoid it, stay away from there. And once a year, it comes down and ruins Christmas.
That'd be a darker take on the movie. The Who's get together and place a bounty on the
Yes.
Grinch. Welcome to Monsters of Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Ellie.
I'm Jared Bornagle.
And I'm Will Melden.
And on this episode, we are taking a look at the Babau. It's technically demon, but it's also kind of devilish, and we'll get to that. And with Mordecai's presents Monsters of the Multiverse, it's such a long title. With Monsters of the Multiverse, how we're going to handle these going forward is we're going to cover the new design, the Monsters of the Multiverse one, and do our normal monster episode. And then at the end, take a look at the legacy and what's changed and kind of what design philosophies that says and kind of what our thoughts on that is and what version we'd like to use. So
if you're interested in that, stick around.
Yeah. And we also did recently a whole episode just kind of covering the in general design philosophies we saw in Monsters of the Multiverse, links at the top, which I think ended up being a really cool discussion worth checking out. But the Babau, so it is a demon. These were formed when Grazitz was in a fight with
Glass.
I forgot to look up
Glacia.
I forgot to look up the pronunciation of that one. I don't know. Wounded Grazit with her sword, and the first Babaus arose when his blood struck the ground. Like I said, the are demons. They kind of have like the will of demons, just go around and make everything the abyss into demons and fight for their demon lord. But they do have a lot of the cunning and some characteristics of a devil based on the arts. When looking at it, you think this fits with a devil instead of a demon. So they do kind of act as this cool little hybrid. Not a whole lot of flavor or lore to them, but their stat blocks I think is pretty neat. So we could dive into that.
Yeah.
So these things are challenge.
Before we even get to that, I would even argue that there's not a ton in terms of like how you would utilize these creatures beyond just being demons or whatever in that regard. I do like the little bit of flavor that it gives, the idea that these Babaus arose when Grazit was struck and its blood turned into the first Babaus and helped it fight off the attacker Glacia. But that's kind of where it ends. From there it's just like, and now they're just demons. Moving on.
Yeah. Oh, and its description: a leathery skin pulled tight over its gaunt frame and curved horn protruding from the back of its elongated skull. A Babau's baleful glare can weaken a creature, and its talons gleam with acidic slime.
Tasty.
Yes. So they are challenge rating 4, armor class of 16, hit points of 82, and a speed of 40 feet. Their lowest stat is int at 11 and highest strength of 19, and they're kind of spread across the board there. Skills of perception +5 and stealth +5. And we keep having monsters where those are the two skills, and it keeps being really common. I'm not sure what that's about. The damage resistance is typical of what you would get from a demon. Resistance to cold, fire, and lightning damage, as well as bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. Immune to poison and the poison condition. Dark vision out to 120 feet. Passive perception of 15. Speaks abyssal. Very standard demon stuff. It has a multi-attack. The Babau makes 2 claw attacks. It can replace one attack with a use of spellcasting or weakening gaze. And that, I guess, is one of the big differences, which I think is really cool and a lot that we see in Monsters of the Multiverse, which I'm actually really happy with that change of being able to swap things out in multi-attack. So their claw attacks +6 to hit, reach of 5 feet. On a hit, it does 1d4 +4 slashing, plus 1d4 acid damage. So nothing too crazy there in terms of damage. It's spellcasting. It's basically like an innate spellcasting, spell save DC of 11, and at will it could detect darkness, dispel magic, fear, heat metal, or levitate. All really awesome spells. A lot of times you see things with like some out of combat spells and stuff for like a Babau seems weird, but all of those definitely have their uses.
The only one that doesn't, as I've found out and have tried putting more and more thought into it, is darkness. They do not have a way to see through magical darkness, and they only have melee attacks. So it might, I guess, help them with stealthing but if you can't see out of the darkness, you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage too. So I just don't see a reason to use darkness. And this is coming off of a fight where I used darkness to start, and I was like, oh, no one should do that. There's no reason for it to use darkness.
Right. Yeah, it actually ended up hurting you and that Babau because cast darkness on itself with Will's character who had blind sight.
Yeah.
Who then had advantage on all its attacks against the Babau, and the Babau had all disadvantage and ended up being in favor of us.
Which, funny enough, if I had the opportunity, I'd do that again because it gave a character a chance to shine with one of their abilities that was like unexpected, because they wouldn't know that you had blind sight.
That's true.
Why would they know that? So like, I'm glad that I did that, but it was definitely from a strategic standpoint, just totally pointless.
Yeah. I guess darkness could be used. So if nothing has blind sight, if everyone's equally blind in darkness, it actually cancels out. Because so you're attacking something you can't see, so that gives you disadvantage.
Right.
But the thing you're attacking can't see is you, and that gives you advantage.
Right.
And so all the attacks within darkness cancel out to just regular attacks on each other.
I guess then where it becomes a benefit is if, let's say, fairy fire is cast on them. And instead of trying to break concentration, darkness now makes it so that everything just evens out. It's an advantage
also
canceller.
Protect yourself from like spellcasters.
Ranged.
Yep, that's true.
A lot of the spells, if you can't see them, you can't cast them.
100%. And I could see there being like a swarm of these things that surround one PC, and then they goes dark.
That's spooky.
That'd be just kind of like a thematic, scary thing, and it makes it harder for other people to rush in and save that PC.
Mm-hmm.
So there's uses. Okay, and then the last action is Weakening Gaze. The Babau targets one creature that can see within 20 feet. The target must make a DC 13 con save. On a failed, the target deals only half damage with weapon attacks that use strength for 1 minute. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. So I don't think you used this once in our fight.
I did not, because there is only one person who uses strength attacks, I believe. Yeah, just one. We have a barbarian, and probably could have used it on them, but I found that the spellcasting generally felt more interesting to use. Mm-hmm. The DC 13 con saving throw was also just too low, I felt like, to try and justify trying on it. I don't know. Maybe could have used it on the barbarian. I think this one just kind of ended up being party dependent. I don't know if I specifically said we fought these recently. It's one of the reasons why we chose this, just to give some that small bit of context. So yeah, with a barbarian in our party, I felt like it made sense, or it could have made sense to use the Weakening Gaze. One kind of note is that, yeah, with the spellcasting being a thing you could replace on the multi-attack as well as the Weakening Gaze, when trying to make the choice, it becomes a little tougher to justify compared to using some of these other spells.
Sure.
Like heat metal.
That was annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, it's a pretty good ability, Weakening Gaze. As mentioned, DC 13 con saving throw isn't terribly high, but if the creature fails, there's no way for it to break it. It's not a concentration ability. It doesn't just disappear or anything like that. It's just any attack it uses would be half damage for that minute. Oh, I'm so sorry. It does say it can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns. Oh no. I feel like I should just restate that.
If you have a non-magical weapon, you're now doing quarter damage, which is pretty brutal.
Right, because these things have resistance to non-magical attacks.
Yeah, and like most damage types that come up. Though I do think it's funny that they have acid on their claws and they have no resistance or immunity to acid damage. Like, imagine being able to hold acid with your hands, but if you get it on the rest of your body, it's like, whoa, you stop that.
I feel like that's kind of how the human body works.
Really? You just hold acid in your hands?
Obviously not with acid, but there are so many things in our body where it's like essential to our survival, where if it ends up getting in the wrong place, it's going to kill us.
I guess you could say it like with air in the bloodstream. Sure,
that's
but
one thing. Or like
water
lower
in your
intestine
lungs?
bacteria ending up in your stomach.
No, that just seems
Um,
like a total oversight. We need to call up evolution because
right.
those are a little too
All
close for
sorts of
comfort.
things. Bacteria and stuff like in your nose and nasal passages. If it gets like in your eye or in your blood, it's like it's yeah. I
All
don't know
right.
why. Yeah, it's not really necessary to this discussion, but no, I don't find it that crazy that they can manage acid on their hands, but nowhere else.
I concede. I concede. In terms of use for this creature, 'cause, I mean, it's as you look at it, I mean, nothing too wild that stands out, but it is a pretty solid challenge rating for creature for not being super high challenge rating. It's got a good amount of health. It does a solid ish amount of damage. It comes out to about 18 per turn if both attacks hit. +6 to hit is even pretty good on the challenge rating scale. Usually something like a challenge rating 5 or 6 that's going to have +6 to hit. So I think from that perspective, it's nice to see a monster that's just like, oh, this feels solid. I don't look at this and go, oh, this doesn't have enough health, or like something is way off with this. It feels like a challenge rating 4 right off the rip.
Right.
And I think some of that, I'll be honest, comes from the changes to that were made in Monsters of the Multiverse, because being able to cast a spell in replacement for one of those changes a whole bunch.
Right. And then I was going to say pared down spell list of just solid ones, but it's actually the same. So never mind on
Yes,
that.
yeah, it is the
Yeah.
same spell list.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say DC 11 feels really low,
It does.
I
but
think
we
it's well
kept
designed.
failing them. What'd you say?
These spells are really, 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 really rough. Fear
Yes.
is a party killer, and a DC 11.
Would you say it's a mind
sucks.
killer?
Fear
No,
is the
I'd say
mind
it's a
killer.
party
Yes.
killer. Fear is the party killer. If you don't give your players line of sight breaking objects. But DC 11 makes it less threatening, especially at
Yes.
will and especially replacing an attack.
Yes.
If that was too much higher, it would just like completely fly off the rails, I think.
Yeah.
Levitate too.
100%.
We learned that pretty quickly. Being up in the air is not fun for certain members of the party.
A monk. Yeah. Levitated the monk.
He's got darts. He was fine.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. They're very strong spells. And we did see things failed.
Yeah, a lot. And Fear, I think, works out well too, being such a low DC, because with it being a cone ability, you're casting on 3 creatures. Someone is going to roll below a 10. Yeah, it's just going to
Right.
happen. Or it's not. But I mean, whatever.
Right.
Again, it's replacing one attack. So if you really want it to get off, you just do it again.
Right.
And regardless of whether or not it totally disrupts the fight and just makes it this huge spell that, oh, we need to break the concentration on fear, otherwise this entire fight's done. It just makes it dynamic. It makes new things happen. It expands beyond I attack again. And if you were talking about replacing both attacks with a spell, which is what the previous version was, then it's not going to feel worth it. I really just don't think that I would cast these DC 11 spells and then not get any attacks from it.
100%. Yeah.
And then from there, I mean, this might be getting too much into the comparison, so I'll just hold off. Just talking about how to use it a little bit more. We did mention Levitate. Being able to lift a melee combatant who doesn't have any type of ranged attacks completely takes them out of the fight. I will say, just from a general advice, if somebody has literally no way of attacking other than melee, levitating them probably isn't too fun for them, because they have no active way to try and break it. I consciously made the choice that it was like, all right, if the monk fails, it's not a big deal, because they had darts, so they're at least attempting to break concentration and feel like they're actively working towards something.
Right.
But otherwise, Levitate's a bit of a rough spell, because there's no save at the end of your turn to break it.
Right. It's one save at the beginning, and then that's it. Lasts for 10 minutes.
Having Dispel Magic, I think, is huge for a CR4 creature. Honestly, a little bit strong, potentially. It didn't come up at all in our fight, but the ability to just shut down a spell of 3rd level or lower, I don't even think you're going to have much higher than that.
Yeah, Dispel and at will Dispel magic that could replace one of their attacks.
Yeah.
It's a good thing no one tried to cast any buffs or anything like that.
Yeah, that can almost be a little too powerful. So you have to be careful with it.
Right. Come to think of it, you probably... So I'm an artificer in this one, and so I had my cannon out. You probably could have dispelled that.
That's an interesting thought. I wonder if you can dispel magic on it.
Yeah, choose one creature, object, or a magical effect.
And so we'll consider
I
that a
don't know.
magical effect?
Like at the first level spell, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's worth looking up.
So because of the fact that Dispel Magic targets spells, it does not work on the arcane turret, I believe.
It choose one creature, object, or magical effect within range.
Any spell of
third
level. Or lower.
You're right. Never mind.
Yeah. So in this case,
Okay.
it would not work.
Okay.
Which is fine.
For that, you'd probably need like the anti-magic cone or sphere.
Yeah. I think that'd be really probably annoying, because then you could argue that Beastmaster's companions could be dispelled as well, and that's just a little much.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think these guys are really great. Tons of uses for them. I mean, they can just be interesting monsters to throw in. Like, they're demons. Why are they there? Demon reasons.
Yes.
Just kill people and drag them back into the abyss. I think they could really shine with other demons.
Yes.
Because their melee attack isn't that great, but since they have all their at-will spellcasting and the weakening gaze, them hanging kind of more in the back with other demons and using their various spells to fuck with the party makes for a really interesting and dynamic fight. Gives you very clear targets to go after, but they're not like squishy spellcasters, though, with their 16 AC and 82 hit points.
Yeah, but I think they sit at a good spot where if you were high level, we'll say 12 and over, that these would make great minions and not be one-hit kills. I mean, they're adding some difficulty, they're adding some crunch to the combat, but they're not so high that they're their own thing to fight. They're not so low that you're just wiping the floor with them with a single fireball or something. It puts them in a really nice spot. Yeah,
actually, the perfect minions. And enough of an annoyance to deal with, but not going to die in one hit. Yeah.
And with a spell like Heat Metal, it just doesn't matter what level it is, because that is just frustrating. If you've got the paladin or your fighter with metal armor or whoever has metal armor, it doesn't need to do anything more than just be within 60 feet and spend one of its attacks on casting Heat Metal, and now you need to break that concentration. Otherwise, again, just 2d8 fire damage every single turn for free. Yeah, and disadvantage on all attack rolls and ability checks. That's right. That's pretty big too. Yep. So Heat Metal is the real mind killer. Yes. and it just takes a bonus action to keep it going, which the Babau no other uses have any use for. So
I'll say this: the Heat Metal spell against players, players will often highly focus on, like, I have my big old fancy sword that I love, and that's it. So your paladin's like connected to that. If you heat that, they can drop it, preventing the damage, but they may be just like worthless without it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to be weary of. And if they might be able to pull out another weapon, but again, with this thing being so easily changing what it's casting Heat Metal on, you just have to be careful. You can be a jerk about it, to be honest. Right. And just not have fun, or not let the players have fun. Right. All right, there's a way to boost the monk. Instead of like actually boosting the monk itself, you just give like tons and tons of monsters Heat Metal and heavily use it on your party. And it's like, look who doesn't need any of that now. Yeah, that's how to fix the monk. Let's send that to Wizards of the Coast. Give more monsters heat metal so that
Yes.
not wearing metal armor is important. It gives druids a buff as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's been saying how weak druids are. Don't give heat metal to everything. Use it sparingly, like very sparingly. It's a rough spell. I mean, really,
Yeah.
it's second.
There's no save. If it's something you're holding, you have to make a con save, otherwise you drop it. But even if you pass the con save, but then choose to hold on to it, that's where you start getting disadvantage and stuff.
Yeah.
It just happens. It's a really awesome spell.
Yeah.
That never seems to come up for the players.
Never. Not once.
So, talking about comparing it to the previous version a little more directly, I know we've discussed some. The big one, of course, being that you can replace one of your spells for an attack, and say that I think definitely came up a lot here. One of the other changes that I think is at least mildly interesting, they took away a spear. It had a ranged attack before that it no longer has.
Yeah. That one just felt weird that it had a spear.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Like, I don't know why this thing would have a spear.
Its tail looks like a spear, but it didn't say it's a tail spear. You can throw it. So unless it's ripping off its tail and throwing it, which is cool. It should do that. But it's a demon. What else do demons do?
Right.
But yeah, there's no spear in the artwork. There's no discussion about a spear. It felt like there was a mechanical choice made when they said, well, it's CR4, but it only has a melee attack, so this thing's going to suck at range. So we need to give it something.
Yeah, I guess. I think I'm okay with it just having claws.
Me too. I mean, it obviously worked out fine this time. If there's a flying creature in your party, maybe you need to deal with it differently. But even then, you just cast heat metal.
Yeah.
Like if somebody was flying around and they had, I guess a longbow doesn't have metal in it. Heat metal their armor? I don't know. Either way, there's ways to affect them.
Right. Or cast levitate on yourself as the Babau. Oh.
Or cast darkness on them.
Yeah.
On a flying creature. Right? Because you can do it. You can do it on an object. This isn't being worn or carried. Yep, that's it.
No, you just cast it where you are, and then they can't really shoot.
Then they can't attack you. Yep. Very true. Very true.
Yep.
So forcing them to come into melee.
Because of the fly spell, dispel it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But otherwise, say on this, this other change is that the claws before just did slashing damage. Now it does a D4 slashing and then a D4 acid damage, which when in the description it says their claws are covered in acid, seems like a bit of an oversight that Volos didn't have any acid damage on top of it.
They actually added that.
Yeah, the old description did not say that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Even though
more
the art's
changes.
The same, but...
Okay, that's just like a little rider at the end. Just that, and its talons gleam with acidic slime, by the way.
Yeah, I like that change of different damage types added to an attack. I know could sometimes be a little more complicated to like figure out resistances and all that, but I think that's more interesting than just everything does piercing or slashing or bludgeoning.
Definitely agree. It's more interesting. I think that it's come up a couple of times from discussions I've seen that it slows down combat a little bit. Personally, I don't feel like it does, at least for our table. We even had a barbarian who was resistant to the bludgeoning side, and we got into a rhythm rather quickly where it's just like, okay, here's the slashing damage. Great, having that, and then here's the acid damage. Great, adding that on top of it. It's not like these numbers were so complicated that it's like, okay, I got 16 slashing damage, 66 slashing damage, and then like 5d4 acid damage. It definitely gets a little bit more complicated there. So I'll say it's a change. And I think even on the Monsters of the Multiverse episode, I was saying like, oh, it's confusing. And I don't know if I like 2 damage types all the time. Yes, it's kind of confusing, but it adds some more uniqueness to the monsters. So I think it's something we'll all get used to pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it's not like this is brand new. There are monsters that have
Yes.
done that. It's
Yes.
not uncommon, actually, prior to Monsters of the Multiverse.
It's semi uncommon.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot more common now. Then
Sure.
the
Yeah.
only, well, one of the other changes here is that it before made 2 melee attacks and could also use its weakening gaze before or after these attacks. So now it's just replacing one of the attacks with weakening gaze or spellcasting, of course.
Right.
Not a massive switch, but definitely a design philosophy change here. In, just kind of putting those more in line with the multi-attack and making the multi-attack more versatile. It feels like it runs a little bit smoother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see that type of change all throughout Monsters of the Multiverse, and I'm really for it. It reads like a really subtle change, but I think it's a huge difference in the field of fight. Makes these things feel a lot more powerful because that spell casting is strong and scary. But as you said, with a DC 11, it can be hard to justify the entire action for it.
Yeah, and I think
So now they don't.
I'm guessing that we'll see this change with dragons as well. Frightful Presence is what comes to mind. Dragons generally get that Frightful Presence, and it always felt really pointless because it's like, okay, I do it once at the start of the turn and whatever. But a lot of dragons have spellcasting. So now if it starts to read like, okay, you get multi-attack and you get 3 attacks, and it can replace one of those attacks with either Frightful Presence or spellcasting, that to me now sounds like, oh, that becomes a more interesting feature instead of, again, foregoing all attacks for spellcasting. That doesn't feel like a dragon.
Right. There are no.
Are there any dragons in this?
There's 2 monsters that are dragon monster type, but they're the guard drake and the cobalt dragon shield.
That's what I thought. Say, because it didn't do any monster manual ones.
No, yeah.
Though it probably should have. if there was a book that needed a fresh coat of paint.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of subtle changes, but I will say that after using one of these monsters once, the fight felt really solid in terms of how the mechanics of the monster played out. I'm sure there's other things that could be discussed on one particular fight, but from like a DM side, I'm liking these general philosophy changes so far.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to try out more and just see how things go.
Yeah, especially the higher CR creatures. That's where you start to see a lot of this. I still get the feeling I'm not going to love the spellcaster changes, but we'll see.
Yeah, because I mean, this guy is obviously the Babau is obviously a spellcaster, but they just had innate spellcasting before, anyways, and it's the exact same number of spells.
Yeah,
so it's not that it just got a boost by being part of multi-attack.
Yeah.
It's not like the Alhoon where they pare down this huge list of spells to like a small number of innate ones.
Yeah. In terms of using the creature from a role-playing perspective in your game, I really have no ideas beyond what you mentioned of you need to throw some demons in. It works great for that, and it works great as a minion to a bigger demon. Otherwise, these give you nothing to go off of. Maybe as like a setup ambush because they have +5 to stealth. But that's not anything that's really given to us. Even them attacking in groups is, I guess, kind of assumed just based off of the first Babaus, plural, arose when Grazit's blood struck the ground. Okay, so I guess there's multiple of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get away from the flavor a little bit, there's just something with how this thing looks, with its art, and it's like spellcasting is an intelligence 11, so it's not dumb. Like the creature in the woods that's like harassing a village, and there's a bounty to go and kill it. That sort of thing. It like lives in a cave outside of town, and everyone knows to stay away from that. And sometimes it tries trickery to bring people in. That sort of thing.
No,
so I guess kind of like a troll. Like
yeah,
not a D&D troll, but
that actually does make me realize that this is a pretty strong fight against really low level characters.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have magic items, I could almost see this challenge rating feeling a little bit low for how powerful it is. If you're talking about like a level 3 party trying to fight one of these Babaus, and maybe it has its own minions, because whatever, minions are fun. Throw minions in your fight, they're just better. And 82 HP with resistance to cold, fire, lightning, and then non-magical physical attacks effectively gives it 164 HP and an AC of 16. That's a really big fight for a level 3 party.
Right. I'd say 164 puts it in challenge rating 7 range.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you have no ways of getting around those resistances, or very few ways of getting around the resistances, then this can be a pretty heavy fight. So I like that.
Yeah.
I think that is really good for low level groups. This can be pretty good stat block to go off of.
Yeah, like a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Arc boss, yeah.
And it is just creepy. I mean, the art is so good. It kind of looks like the Grinch, though. And I actually don't know if I can unsee it now that I say that.
Okay, yeah. Like, kind of, like, it's not green at all, but...
No.
Yeah, there's something about it that's...
It's very Grinch-like. The long fingers, and I guess the horn coming out, that was his dog in the 2000s movie. He had like the one
did have
horn
like
he put
a
on.
Tuft of hair.
Yes, that's
at the top of his head, and so
and
the
that
horn's
weird
kind of
curly thing is kind of
that.
like the goofy Dr. Seussy hat look.
Yes, 100%. So this thing is just the Grinch, and that's how you could use it. You could literally use it as the Grinch, watching over Whoville. That's what you just described. Is the thing?
I guess I did. Yeah.
In the cave, away from everybody else. Everyone knows to just avoid it, stay away from there. And once a year, it comes down and ruins Christmas.
That'd be a darker take on the movie. The Who's get together and place a bounty on the
yes.
Grinch.
We're tired of him ruining Christmas.
Yes, and then outside adventurers come in and kill the Grinch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or convince him to change his ways.
Sure. I don't think the Grinch was a literal demon, so...
We don't really know. I don't think there's much lore into why the Grinch looks the way he does. He could very well be a demon.
That was not a Dr. Seuss thing, creating like giant encyclopedias of Seuss lore.
He just is what he is.
The Seussiverse.
I'm sure some of the more modern movies that have attempted to explain why he looks how he looks.
Even the Jim Carrey version, I don't think went into it much. They showed him as a kid, and he was like a little creepy Grinch kid, and they were like, "You're ugly," and that was like the long and short of it. Like, right. He's just a really ugly Who. He's just green and covered in fur.
Right.
So this is how you can explain it. The Grinch is a demon in this case, and this is obviously getting a little bit silly here. But if you do want that, like that moral quandary, the way that you can try to solve it without violence, you can throw that in. You can have it be that it's not a literal demon, but it is a creature that has been corrupted by demonic influence, and getting rid of that demonic influence is how you get the good ending.
Okay, that's cool. I like that.
But obviously you'd need to make up your own lore for it and create a lot more hints and subtleties or not so subtleties, because it's players we're talking about, to then let them know to look for this stuff. So yeah, fun fight, fun creature, not a ton of lore, but I'll say it's a good blank slate this time around.
Definitely.
There's good and bad ones. I'm all right with this one.
Yeah.
And the other blank slates I love are the playlists that I can create to cater to my sessions while I try to factor in what music's going to be needed. And nope, I lost it. I don't know. It was a tough one. 2 bad segues in a row. I'm off my game. Shit. Well, I'm never off my game when I use Bardly, that's for sure, because it allows me to seamlessly transition into different songs so that my players always feel immersed at the table, and you can get 50% off a 3-month subscription using the code MNM50. And isn't that really what you need? Is music at your table?
You realize by using your fucked up segue as your actual segue means I have to keep all of that?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as you're good with it.
Of course. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not here to
Okay.
impress people.
Okay.
But the people I know that are impressed are Ed G, MotM, Brian H, Craig A, Can't Turn It Off, Isaac M, Jeth W, Luca L, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Send the Lead 20, Tyler S, Adam A, and Rob K. Thank you all so much, our amazing patrons. And if you'd like to support the show, you can head on over to monstersmulticlass.com/support and check out all of our affiliates as well as our Patreon. And don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoyed things. And I guess comment-wise, your thoughts on the changes or how you'd use the Babau or how you'd pronounce it. I know we're pronouncing it right because we're using the pronunciation guideline, but we went through like 6 or 7 ways of pronouncing it prior to the episode. So
Yeah.
Bao Bun was my favorite for sure.
Yes. Babau bun. Yeah. All right. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching.